What if Marvel directors, the masterminds behind the biggest cinematic universe ever, actually ranked BTS members as superheroes? Not a fan edit, not a meme. Real talk from real directors. 7 guys, 7 insane auras. One has the raw power of a lead Avenger. Another carries a darkness even Loki would respect. But who sits at number 1 and why will it shock you? Who lands at number 7 and why does that spot hit harder than you think? Every rank has a reason. Every reason has a story. This isn't just a list. It's 2 universes colliding. Let's get into it.
Number 7. BTS, Jin. Now, before you lose your mind in the comments, before you type, how is Jin at number 7? Take a breath, sit back, and actually listen to why this placement is way more powerful than you think. Because being number 7 on this list doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean he's less than anyone. It means that in a universe full of gods, soldiers, and monsters, Kim Sek-jin represents something that even the strongest Avenger couldn't always be. The heart, the emotional anchor, the one who holds everything together when the world is literally falling apart. And if you know anything about Marvel, you know that kind of hero doesn't always wear the flashiest suit, but they're the reason the team survives. Let's talk about it. Kim Sek-jin, born December 4th, 1992 in Gwacheon, South Korea, was never supposed to be an idol. Let that satisfying piece of irony sink in for a second. This man was studying acting at Jungkook University. He was scouted by Big Hit Entertainment literally on the street, just walking around being devastatingly handsome, and the scout chased him down because his face was too extraordinary to ignore. That's not a fan myth. That's a real documented story that even Jin himself has confirmed multiple times on camera. He had 0 training in singing or dancing when he joined. 0. He walked into a room full of trainees who had been grinding for years, and he started from absolute scratch. Now, why does a Marvel director look at Jin and not immediately see a frontline Avenger? Here's the thing. They do see something. They see Steve Rogers before the serum. They see the guy who keeps throwing himself into the fight, not because he's the strongest, but because he refuses to let anyone else take the hit. Jin's entire career in BTS is a masterclass in quiet sacrifice. He's the eldest member, the Hyung, and in Korean culture, that role carries enormous weight. You protect the younger ones. You absorb the pressure. You smile even when you're breaking inside so that nobody else has to worry. And Jin? He turned that role into an art form. Go back and watch any BTS behind-the-scenes footage from their early years, 2013, 2014, 2015, when they were broke, exhausted, sharing one tiny apartment, eating cheap meals, wondering if they'd ever make it. Jin was the one cooking for everyone. Jin was the one cracking dad jokes at 2 a.m. to keep morale alive. Jin was the one who, despite being the least experienced performer in the group, never once complained publicly, never once asked for special treatment, and never once let his pride get in the way of the team. That is superhero behavior. Full stop. Now let's talk physicality, because people sleep on this hard. Jin completed his mandatory military service in South Korea, serving in the 5th Infantry Division, one of the most intense frontline units in the ROC Army. He was discharged in June 2024, and reports from fellow soldiers described him as genuinely hard-working, humble, and physically committed. This is a man who went from selling out stadiums with 100,000 people to doing drills at 5 a.m. in freezing Korean winters, and he did it without a single public complaint. If that's not superhero discipline, I don't know what is. But here's the real reason Marvel directors place Jin at number 7, and it's not an insult, it's an observation. Jin's superpower isn't combat, it's morale. In every great superhero team, there's someone whose job isn't to deliver the final blow, it's to make sure the team doesn't collapse before they get there. In the Avengers, that role floats between characters, but it never has a permanent home. Jin would be that home. He'd be the guy cracking a joke right before the final battle, not because he's not scared, but because he knows that if he breaks, everyone breaks. His visual presence is undeniable. The man was literally called worldwide handsome and turned it into a global trademark. His face could absolutely carry a Marvel costume, a dramatic close-up, a heroic slow-motion walk. But his real power? It's in the moments between the action, the quiet conversations, the hand on a teammate's shoulder, the refusal to give up even when every logical reason says he should. Jin is the hero who reminds you why you're fighting in the first place. And in a cinematic universe that sometimes forgets the human element behind the spectacle, that's not number 7 energy, that's foundation energy. The list doesn't start without him.
Number 6, Suga. Alright, now we're getting into dangerous territory, and I mean that literally, because the man sitting at number 6 is not the type of hero who shows up with a flashy entrance and a one-liner. No. Min Yoongi, known to the world as Suga and to the underground as August D, is the kind of hero who's already 10 steps ahead of you before you even realize the war has started. He's the guy in the dark room, staring at a screen, running scenarios, calculating every possible outcome, and when he finally moves, it's over. You never saw it coming, and neither did the enemy. That's not a metaphor, that's literally how this man operates in real life. Let's go deep. Min Yoongi was born on March 9, 1993 in Daegu, South Korea, and if you think his journey to global superstardom was smooth, you are wildly mistaken. Yoongi grew up in a family that was not wealthy, not even close. He's spoken openly, painfully openly, about the financial struggles his family faced, about how pursuing music was seen as a reckless, irresponsible dream in a society that demands stability and conventional career paths. His parents didn't support his music ambitions initially, not because they were cruel, but because they were scared. Scared that their son was chasing something that would leave him broke and broken. And honestly, for a while, it almost did. Before BTS, Yoongi was working as an underground rapper in Daegu. He was producing beats, writing lyrics, performing in small venues for almost nobody. He had a part-time job delivering food, and at one point, he was so broke that he had to choose between eating and taking the bus. Let that sit with you. The man who would eventually produce Grammy-nominated tracks, who would collaborate with global icons, who would sell out solo world tours, once couldn't afford a bus ticket and a meal on the same day. He chose the bus. He went hungry. He kept going. That's not just resilience. That's the origin story of a superhero who was forged in darkness. And Marvel directors, they see that immediately. Yoongi carries himself with a stillness that most performers simply cannot replicate. Watch him on stage as August D, the alter ego he created specifically to channel the raw, unfiltered, aggressive side of himself that BTS's image sometimes couldn't contain. August D isn't cute. August D isn't polished. August D is fury. Pure, concentrated, lyrical fury. Tracks like Daytweeta, Hagum, and The Last don't just tell stories, they rip open wounds and dare you to look inside. The Last, in particular, is one of the most brutally honest songs in K-pop history, where Yoongi openly raps about his battle with depression, social anxiety, and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. He didn't sugarcoat it, he didn't hide behind metaphors, he said it plainly in his own voice and let the world deal with the discomfort. That kind of raw honesty, that's what makes a Marvel anti-hero legendary. Think about it. The greatest Marvel characters aren't the ones with the cleanest backstories. They're the ones who were broken and rebuilt themselves. Tony Stark was an egomaniac arms dealer who almost died in a cave and came out as Iron Man. Bucky Barnes was a tortured prisoner of war who became the Winter Soldier before clawing his way back to humanity. Yoongi fits that archetype perfectly, not because he's dark for the sake of being dark, but because his darkness is earned. It comes from real pain, real struggle, real nights where he wasn't sure if any of this was going to work out. And then there's the genius factor, and I don't use that word loosely. Min Yoongi is one of the most respected producers in the Korean music industry. He's produced and written for BTS under his own name and under the alias August D, but he's also produced tracks for other major artists, IU's 8, Halsey's contributions, and numerous soundtrack pieces. His production style is meticulous, layered, and emotionally precise. He hears things in music that other people don't. He builds sonic architectures that feel both intimate and massive at the same time. A Marvel director looks at that and sees the strategist, the guy who doesn't need to throw the hardest punch, he needs to be the one who decides where the punch lands. He's Nick Fury's brain in a rapper's body. He's the hero who sits in the shadows, watches everyone else make their moves, and then, at the exact right moment, delivers the one action that changes everything. Yoongi also dealt with a significant shoulder injury that required surgery in 2020, an injury he'd been quietly enduring for years since a car accident during his trainee days. He performed through pain. He produced through pain. He created some of his best work while his body was literally fighting against him. If that isn't superhero energy,
pushing through physical limitation to protect and serve something bigger than yourself, then the word has no meaning. So why number 6 and not higher? Because in a superhero team, the strategist is essential, but the ones above him bring something extra, an unpredictability, a physical presence, a duality that shifts the battlefield. Yoongi is the constant, the anchor of intelligence, the one you trust with the plan, but the ones above, they're the ones who make you hold your breath when they walk into the room. Still, don't get it twisted. Without number 6, there is no plan, and without the plan, every hero above him falls.
Number 5. RM.
Now we're crossing into territory where raw talent alone doesn't cut it anymore, because the man sitting at number 5 isn't just gifted, he's built different on a molecular level. Kim Namjoon, the leader of BTS, the voice that stood at the United Nations podium and made world leaders sit up straight, is the kind of hero that Marvel has always struggled to write perfectly. He's the intellectual, the philosopher, the one who doesn't need to raise his fist because his words alone can shift the entire direction of a war. And here's the thing about Namjoon that makes Marvel directors lean forward in their chairs. This man isn't performing intelligence, he is intelligence. And when you combine that with the weight of leading the biggest musical act in human history through a decade of chaos, pressure, and global scrutiny, you don't just get a superhero, you get a king. Let's rewind. Kim Namjoon was born on September 12, 1994 in Ilsan, South Korea, a suburb of Seoul that's about as far from Hollywood glamour as you can imagine. But even as a kid, Namjoon was different. He scored in the top 1% of the national university entrance exams. His IQ has been reported at 148. For context, that puts him in the gifted category by virtually every psychological standard on Earth. He taught himself English, not in a classroom, not with a private tutor, by watching the American sitcom Friends over and over and over again. He dissected the dialogue, mimicked the pronunciation, studied the rhythm of conversational English until he could speak it fluently enough to deliver speeches at the United Nations General Assembly. Let me say that again, because I don't think people fully appreciate how insane that is. A kid from Ilsan, South Korea, taught himself English from a 1990 sitcom, and then used that self-taught language to address the entire world on a global stage, talking about self-love, youth empowerment, and the importance of finding your own voice. That's not just impressive, that's superhero-level autodidactic brilliance. And the speeches themselves, they weren't scripted corporate fluff. When Namjoon stood at the UN in September 2018 for the Generation Unlimited campaign and launched the Love Myself initiative in partnership with UNICEF, he opened with a story about his childhood, about how he used to look up at the stars and dream, about how he slowly lost his own voice as the world told him who to be, and about how he found it again through music. He told the leaders of the world, "Tell me your story. I want to hear your voice." The room was silent, not because they were bored, because they were moved. A 24-year-old idol from South Korea had just done what most diplomats spend entire careers failing to do. He made a room full of powerful people actually listen. Marvel directors see that, and they don't see a side character. They see Black Panther energy. They see Professor X energy. They see the leader who doesn't need the biggest army or the strongest weapon, because his power is vision, the ability to see a future that nobody else can see yet, and then convince everyone to follow him there. And Namjoon has been doing that for BTS since day one. He was the first member recruited by Bang Si-hyuk, the foundation. Every other member was built around him. When BTS was nobody, when they were a small group from a small company with no connections, no money, no industry support, Namjoon was the one who kept the mission alive. He wrote, he produced, he led group meetings, he translated for the group during international promotions when nobody else could speak English. He was 19 years old carrying the communicative weight of an entire global expansion on his shoulders, and he did it with a grace that most seasoned executives couldn't match. But here's where it gets deeper, and this is the part that Marvel directors find genuinely cinematic. Namjoon is also profoundly, achingly human in ways that contradict the genius leader archetype. He's famously clumsy. The members joke constantly about how he breaks everything he touches. He's lost countless pairs of earbuds, cracked phone screens, knocked things over during live broadcasts. There are entire fan-compiled videos titled RM Destroying Things that have millions of views. And that clumsiness, that's what makes the narrative real. real, because the greatest Marvel heroes aren't the ones who are perfect. They're the ones who carry immense power and still trip over their own humanity. That's Peter Parker. That's Bruce Banner. That's Namjoon. He's the guy who can decode the philosophical implications of Nietzsche and Foucault at a V Live at midnight, and then immediately knock over his water bottle and laugh at himself like a little kid. That duality, that tension between extraordinary intellect and endearing vulnerability is cinematic gold. And let's not sleep on his artistry outside of BTS. Namjoon is a serious contemporary art enthusiast. He visits museums and galleries around the world, and his engagement with visual art has been so impactful that there's an actual phenomenon called the RM effect, where museums he visits experience significant spikes in attendance after he posts about them. He's been photographed at exhibitions by artists like KAWS, Yayoi Kusama, and Jean-Michel Basquiat. He doesn't just consume art, he engages with it intellectually, publicly, and passionately, inspiring millions of young people to explore culture beyond their comfort zone. A superhero who makes you smarter just by being around him? That's rare. His solo album Indigo in 2022 was a deeply personal project that featured collaborations with artists like Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, and Eugene, spanning genres from hip-hop to rock to folk. It wasn't a commercial play, it was a statement. A 28-year-old leader of the biggest group choosing vulnerability over spectacle, depth over hype. Marvel directors recognize that creative courage. It's the same energy that makes characters like T'Challa resonate beyond the action sequences. So why number 5? Why not higher? Because as powerful as Namjoon's mind is, and make no mistake, it's one of the most powerful minds in modern entertainment, the heroes ranked above him possess something that goes beyond intellect. They carry a physical duality, an emotional volatility, a stage presence so visceral that it doesn't just fill a room, it warps the room. Namjoon leads with wisdom. The ones above him, though, they lead with something you can't teach, something you can't learn from any sitcom, any book, any speech. But never forget, every team needs its brain. And in this superhero lineup, Kim Namjoon isn't just the brain. He's the conscience, the compass, the reason the mission means something in the first place. Without him, you might win the battle, but you'd lose the reason for fighting it.
Number 4, J-Hope. Let me ask you something real quick, and I want you to really think about this before you answer. What's more dangerous? A hero who everyone knows is powerful, or a hero who everyone underestimates because he's smiling? Because that's exactly what Jungkook, J-Hope, represents. And it's exactly why Marvel directors can't stop talking about him. See, in the superhero world, there's a specific archetype that's almost impossible to cast perfectly. It's the character who walks into the room radiating pure light, warm, welcoming, magnetic, the kind of energy that makes everyone around them feel safe, feel happy, feel like everything's gonna be okay. And then, in one single moment, one shift, one trigger, one beat drop, that same person transforms into something so ferocious, so controlled, so devastatingly precise that you realize the sunshine was never the whole story. It was the lid, and underneath that lid is a nuclear reactor. That's J-Hope, and that's why he's sitting at number 4 on this list. Let's go back to the beginning. Jungkook was born on February 18, 1994 in Gwangju, South Korea, a city in the southwestern part of the country that's historically known for its fierce spirit of resistance and artistic passion. Gwangju isn't Seoul. It doesn't have the glitz, the industry infrastructure, the instant access to entertainment companies. Growing up there and dreaming of becoming a performer means you have to want it more than everyone else because you're starting from further behind. And Hoseok didn't just want it, he was consumed by it. Before BTS, before Big Hit, before any of this, Hoseok was already a legend in the underground dance scene. He was part of a street dance crew called Neuron, and he competed in national dance battles where kids trained their entire lives just to survive the first round. Hoseok didn't just survive, he won. He placed first in a national dance competition in 2008, and his reputation in the Gwangju dance community was so strong that when Big Hit Entertainment was scouting for trainees, his name kept coming up over and over again. They didn't find him by accident. The dance world pointed them directly to him and said, "That one, that's the one you want."
And here's where it gets interesting from a superhero perspective, because Hoseok almost didn't become J-Hope. When he first entered Big Hit as a trainee, the plan was for him to be in a dance-focused group, but the company's direction shifted, and the project evolved into what would become BTS, a hip-hop idol group. Hoseok was a dancer, not a rapper. He had to completely reinvent himself. He had to learn to rap, learn to write, learn to channel his physical artistry into a verbal one, and he had to do it while competing with trainees who had been rapping for years. Most people would have crumbled. Hoseok evolved. He emerged as BTS's main dancer and a genuinely formidable rapper whose verse on songs like Daydream, Chicken Noodle Soup, and Baseline showcased a rhythmic complexity and flow that silenced every single person who ever tried to dismiss him as just a dancer. But let's talk about what makes Marvel directors specifically point at J-Hope and say that's a number 4 superhero. It's the duality. And I don't throw that word around lightly, because every BTS member has some version of duality, but Hoseok's version is genuinely unnerving. In daily life, J-Hope is sunshine incarnate. He's the member who screams when he sees a bug. He's the one who does agio, cute expressions, that make the other members cringe and laugh simultaneously. He's the guy who literally named himself J-Hope because he wanted to be a source of hope and light for the fans. His laugh is infectious, his energy is boundless. When you watch BTS variety content, J-Hope is almost always the one driving the mood upward, keeping things chaotic and fun, making sure nobody's energy dips. He's the emotional engine of the group's public persona. And then you watch him perform, and everything changes. Go watch J-Hope's solo performance at Lollapalooza 2022. Just go watch it. He was the first South Korean artist to headline a main stage at a major U.S. music festival. Not a side stage, not a guest slot, the main stage, and he absolutely disseminated it. The energy he brought wasn't just high, it was almost violent in its intensity. His body moved with a precision that doesn't look human. Every angle, every isolate, every micro movement was calculated to the millisecond, but it didn't feel robotic. It felt explosive, organic, like watching a controlled detonation in real time. His set included tracks from his solo album Jack in the Box, an album that deliberately shattered the bright, hopeful J-Hope image and replaced it with something raw, aggressive, and confrontational. The lead single, More, was dark, industrial, almost menacing. Arson was a sonic manifesto about burning everything down and starting over. The album cover art was inspired by Pandora's box, the idea that opening this container would release chaos, darkness, and everything uncomfortable into the world. That's not a marketing gimmick. That's J-Hope telling you directly that the sunshine you've been seeing for years is only half the truth. And Marvel directors, they eat that alive, because that's the most compelling superhero origin dynamic you can write. The hero's greatest power is hidden behind the personality you'd least expect. Think about it. Bruce Banner is a mild-mannered scientist. When he transforms into the Hulk, the contrast is what makes it iconic. Shazam is a literal child who transforms into a godlike being. The power isn't just in the transformation itself, it's in the gap between the two states. And nobody in BTS, arguably nobody in modern entertainment, has a wider gap between their off mode and their on mode than Jung Hoseok. Offstage, he's your best friend. On stage, he's your worst nightmare. His dance technique is often cited by professional choreographers as being among the most versatile and technically sound in the entire K-pop industry. He can switch from popping, locking, crumping, contemporary, and street styles within a single performance without ever losing the thread. That's not just talent, that's mastery. That's someone who has spent tens of thousands of hours drilling movements into their muscle memory until their body becomes the instrument and the music becomes the command. In superhero terms, that's a hero with complete control over their physical form, every muscle, every nerve, every reflex operating at peak capacity on demand. His military service further cemented this image. J-Hope enlisted in April 2023 and served as an assistant drill instructor, meaning the military literally looked at this K-pop idol and said, "You're disciplined enough, physical enough, and commanding enough to help train other soldiers." He completed his service in October 2024, and fellow soldiers reported that he was genuinely respected, not because he was famous, but because he showed up every day with the same intensity he brings to the stage. So, why number 4 and not top 3? Because as explosive as J-Hope's duality is, and it is explosive, the 3 members above him possess something that transcends performance. They carry an aura that doesn't need a stage to activate. It follows them everywhere. In every photo, every interview, every candid moment, J-Hope can turn it on and off like a switch, and that switch is powerful. But the top 3, their switch is always on. They don't transform into superheroes. They already are superheroes 24 hours a day, whether the camera is rolling or not. Still, never underestimate number 4, because if this superhero team ever faces a moment where hope is lost, where the mission is falling apart, where everyone's ready to quit, J-Hope is the one who smiles, steps forward, and says, "We go again." And somehow, against all logic, against all odds, that smile makes everyone believe it.
Number 3. Jimin. Okay, we just crossed into the top 3, and I need you to understand something before we go any further. The gap between number 4 and number 3 on this list isn't just a step. It's a chasm, because the 3 members standing in these final spots don't just perform like superheroes, they exist like superheroes. Every breath, every glance, every micro-expression carries a weight that Marvel directors describe as cinematic without trying. And the man sitting at number 3, he might be the most dangerously beautiful performer alive. Not handsome, not pretty, dangerous, because Park Jimin doesn't just walk into a room, he alters the gravity of it, and that is not an exaggeration. Let's talk about who this man really is. Park Jimin was born on October 13, 1995 in Busan, South Korea, the country's second largest city, a port town with grit, salt air, and a culture that breeds toughness wrapped in warmth. Jimin grew up as a genuinely dedicated student of the arts. Before BTS, before K-pop, before any of the fame, Jimin was a top student at Busan High School of Arts, where he majored in contemporary dance. Not hip-hop, not street dance, contemporary. And that distinction matters enormously because contemporary dance isn't about hitting hard beats and looking cool. It's about emotional storytelling through the body. It's about making your muscles speak the language of grief, joy, longing, rage, and love without saying a single word. Jimin didn't just study this discipline, he excelled at it so profoundly that he was the top student in his department. His teachers have gone on record saying he was one of the most naturally gifted movers they'd ever trained. When Big Hit Entertainment accepted him as a trainee, he was the last member to join the BTS lineup, arriving in 2012, just 1 year before their debut. He had the least amount of time to prepare, the least amount of time to learn the idol system, the vocal training, the rap basics, the variety show skills, the camera presence. And yet, from the very first BTS performance, Jimin was the one audiences couldn't stop watching. There's a reason for that, and Marvel directors have articulated it perfectly. Jimin possesses a quality that the film industry calls the eye magnet. It's the phenomenon where, in a group of equally talented performers, your gaze is involuntarily pulled toward one person. You don't choose to watch them. Your brain does it for you. It's subconscious, primal, almost chemical, and Jimin has it at a level that directors say they've rarely seen in any performer, in any genre, in any country. It's not just his technique, though his technique is devastating. Watch the Black Swan performance. Just watch it once. Jimin's movement in that piece transcends K-pop choreography entirely. It's not dancing, it's possession. His body bends and flows with a fluidity that shouldn't be physically possible for someone with his muscle density. He's simultaneously powerful and weightless, sharp and liquid, masculine and ethereal. Professional dance critics have analyzed his performances and noted that his ability to switch between hard-hitting hip-hop isolations and contemporary extensions within the same 8 count is virtually unmatched in the idol industry. But here's where the superhero conversation gets really interesting.
and really unsettling, because Jimin's true superpower isn't his dance, it's his duality. And unlike J-Hope's duality, which operates like a switch between sunshine and storm, Jimin's duality exists simultaneously, at the same time, in the same moment. He can look at a camera with eyes so soft and innocent that you want to protect him, and in the exact same gaze, there's something predatory, something that says, I know exactly what I'm doing to you, and I'm not gonna stop. That tension, that coexistence of vulnerability and danger is what makes Marvel directors categorize him as a top 3 superhero candidate. Because in the Marvel universe, the most compelling characters are the ones who embody contradiction. Loki is charming and lethal. Scarlet Witch is nurturing and catastrophic. Jimin is angelic and absolutely terrifying. And he knows it. His solo career has only amplified this duality to nuclear levels. His debut solo album, Face, dropped in March 2023, and its lead single, Like Crazy, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Jimin the first Korean solo artist to achieve that milestone. The song itself is a dreamy, intoxicated exploration of loneliness and escapism, delivered with a vocal tone so sweet and aching that it almost hurts to listen to. But the album also contains Set Me Free Part 2, a track with a music video where Jimin dances through rain and darkness with a ferocity that borders on violent. The choreography was physically punishing, and Jimin performed it with an intensity that made you forget you were watching a music video. It felt like watching a confession, a purging, a man ripping something out of himself through movement because words alone weren't enough. His second album, Muse, in 2024, continued this exploration, with Who becoming a global streaming phenomenon. But beyond the numbers, what Muse revealed was Jimin's emotional range as an artist, his ability to channel feelings so specific and intimate that millions of strangers felt like he was singing directly to them, individually, personally. That's not just artistry, that's empathy weaponized. And in a superhero context, empathy is the most underrated power in existence. A hero who can feel what others feel, who can sense the emotional frequency of a room and adjust their energy accordingly, is a hero who can manipulate, inspire, comfort, or terrify depending on what the moment demands. Let's also address the physical dimension, because people consistently underestimate Jimin's raw physicality. He's compact, one of the shorter members of BTS, but his body is a precision instrument. His abs became a cultural phenomenon during the No More Dream era. His discipline with physical training is well documented, and sometimes concerning to fans, who have openly worried about his extreme dedication to maintaining his physical form. He pushes his body to limits that most professional athletes would respect, and he does it while simultaneously maintaining a vocal performance schedule that would exhaust a dedicated singer who doesn't dance at all. Marvel directors see that, and they see a hero built for close combat, fast, agile, unpredictable, and devastatingly effective. Not the hero that flies above the battlefield, the hero that's in the center of it, moving through enemies like water through cracks, untouchable and inescapable at the same time. So why number 3 and not higher? Because as mesmerizing as Jimin is, and he is genuinely clinically mesmerizing, the 2 members above him carry something even rarer, something that goes beyond performance, beyond duality, beyond physical mastery. They carry a mythic quality, a feeling that they don't fully belong to this world. Jimin makes you fall in love with the hero. The top 2, they make you believe the hero is real. But don't sleep on number 3, because in any superhero film, Jimin wouldn't just be a team member. He'd be the scene stealer, the one audiences talk about in the lobby afterwards, the one who gets a solo shot in the trailer that makes the entire internet lose its mind. And every single director knows it.
Number 2, BTS V. We're here. Number 2. And I need to be completely honest with you right now. This was the hardest placement on the entire list, not because there was any doubt about whether Kim Taehyung belongs in the top 2. There wasn't. The debate among Marvel directors wasn't if he belongs here, it was whether he should be number 2 or number 1. That's how close it was. That's how insane the energy is at this level. Because Kim Taehyung, known to the world as V, is not a performer. He's not an idol. He's not even a celebrity in the traditional sense. Kim Taehyung is a phenomenon that the entertainment industry still doesn't know how to categorize.
He exists in a space between human and cinematic creation, as if someone at Marvel Studios designed a character on paper, gave him impossible visuals, an impossibly deep voice, an impossibly unpredictable personality, and then that character somehow walked off the page and into reality. That's V. And every single director who has ever been in a room with him says the same thing. He doesn't look real. Let's start where it all began. Kim Taehyung was born on December 30th, 1995 in Daegu, South Korea, the same city as Suga, but a completely different story. Taehyung grew up in a farming family in Gyeocheong, a rural area outside of Daegu, not the city center, the countryside. He was raised by his grandparents for a significant portion of his childhood, surrounded by nature, open fields, and a simplicity that is almost comically distant from the global superstardom he would eventually inhabit. He wasn't originally planning to audition for Big Hit Entertainment. He went to the audition to support a friend, literally just tagged along for moral support. But a Big Hit staff member saw him and asked him to audition on the spot. His friend didn't make it. Taehyung did. And the rest of human pop culture was permanently altered. That origin story alone sounds like something out of a Marvel script. The reluctant hero who never sought the power, never chased the spotlight, but was chosen by it because something about him was simply undeniable. Now let's talk about the visual factor, because it's impossible to discuss V's superhero potential without addressing the single most discussed face in modern entertainment. Kim Taehyung has been called the most handsome man in the world so many times by so many different outlets, polls, and industry professionals that it's essentially become a factual statement rather than an opinion. In 2021, he topped T.C. Candler's 100 Most Handsome Faces list. Plastic surgeons in South Korea have publicly stated that his facial structure represents what they call the golden ratio, the mathematical proportion of facial symmetry that the human brain is hardwired to find maximally attractive. His face has been analyzed by visual artists, digital designers, and even AI facial recognition systems, all reaching the same conclusion. His proportions are statistically anomalous. He doesn't just look good, he looks engineered. And Marvel directors, they lose their minds over this, because in Marvel cinema, the face is the franchise. Think about it. The reason Thor works isn't just because he's a god with a hammer. It's because Chris Hemsworth's face can carry a close-up for 10 seconds without a single line of dialogue and still communicate power, vulnerability, humor, and heartbreak. That's what V's face does, except V does it without trying. There are behind-the-scenes clips where the camera catches him off guard, not performing, not posing, just existing, and every single frame looks like a Renaissance painting. Photographers who have worked with him describe the experience as unsettling because he doesn't have a bad angle, literally. Every direction, every lighting condition, every expression produces an image that looks deliberately composed. He's a walking cinematic shot. But if V was just a face, he'd be a model, not a number 2 superhero. What elevates him into this stratosphere is the voice. Kim Taehyung possesses a deep baritone that is unlike anything else in K-pop, and frankly, unlike almost anything in modern pop music globally. His vocal tone sits in a register that most male pop singers actively avoid because it's considered too low, too heavy, too unconventional for mainstream appeal. Taehyung turned it into his signature. Songs like Stigma, Singularity, and his solo track Love Me Again showcase a vocal color so rich and textured that it feels like it's resonating from somewhere deeper than his chest, somewhere ancient, somewhere mythic. When V sings, it doesn't sound like a performance, it sounds like a spell. And then Then there's the personality, and this is where Marvel directors go from interested to obsessed, because Kim Taehyung is genuinely, certifiably unpredictable, not in a chaotic, uncontrolled way, in a way that suggests he's operating on a completely different wavelength than everyone around him. He says things in interviews that are simultaneously profound and absurd. He makes facial expressions during live broadcasts that become global memes within hours. He forms friendships with people across every industry. Actors like Park Sejin and Choi Woo-shik, musicians across genres, fashion designers, athletes, and every single one of them describes him the same way. He's not like anyone I've ever met. His acting debut in the Korean historical drama Hwarang, the Poet Warrior Youth in 2016 revealed something that surprised even skeptics. Taehyung can genuinely act. His portrayal of Hansung, a young warrior with a tragic arc, was praised for its emotional authenticity and nuance. He didn't play the role like an idol guest starring in a drama. He played it like an actor who happened to also be an idol. The emotional climax of his character's storyline left viewers in tears, and industry insiders began speculating about a potential full acting career if he ever stepped away from music. Marvel directors see that, and they see versatility, the ability to carry dramatic weight, comedic timing, and physical presence all in one package. His solo debut album, Layover, in September 2023, was a masterclass in atmosphere and restraint. While other solo BTS releases leaned into high-energy production or experimental sounds, Taehyung chose softness, jazz influences, R&B textures. Tracks like Slow Dancing and Rainy Days felt like late-night conversations, intimate, warm, slightly melancholy. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, and all 6 tracks charted simultaneously on the Billboard Hot 100. He didn't chase trends, he created a mood, and the world followed him into it. His fashion influence is equally staggering. V has been a front-row fixture at major fashion weeks, a global ambassador for luxury brands like Celine, and his personal style, which veers between vintage sophistication, streetwear edge, and avant-garde experimentation, has made him one of the most watched fashion figures on the planet. Everything he wears sells out, not within days, within minutes, sometimes within seconds. The V effect in fashion is a documented economic phenomenon. So why number 2? Why not the crown? Because as otherworldly as Kim Taehyung is, and he is genuinely, almost frighteningly otherworldly, the person sitting at number 1 possesses something that even V's mythic aura can't quite match. It's not about visuals, it's not about voice, it's not about unpredictability, it's about totality. The number 1 member doesn't excel in 1 or 2 superhero categories. They excel in all of them, simultaneously, without gaps, without weaknesses. V is the hero who makes you believe in gods. Number 1 is the god who makes you believe in heroes. But make no mistake, in any Marvel film, Kim Taehyung wouldn't just be a character, he'd be an icon. The one whose poster hangs on bedroom walls for generations. The one whose single glance in a trailer generates more online conversation than entire films. He's not just superhero material, he's franchise material, and every director in Hollywood knows it.
Number 1, Jungkook. This is it, the summit, the final name, the one this entire list has been building toward. And if you've been paying attention, if you've been reading the clues, feeling the momentum, sensing the pattern of escalation from number 7 all the way to this exact moment, then some part of you already knew. You knew it had to be him. Because when Marvel directors sit down and talk about the one BTS member who most perfectly, most completely, most overwhelmingly embodies what it means to be a superhero, there is no debate. There is no split vote. There is no, well, it depends on the criteria.
Every criteria, every single one, it all points to the same person, Jungkook, the golden maknae, the man who doesn't just check every box on the superhero checklist, he is the checklist. And right now, I'm gonna tell you exactly why. Jungkook was born on September 1, 1997 in Busan, South Korea. The same city as Jimin, the same gritty port town energy, but a completely different trajectory. Jungkook auditioned for the Korean talent show Superstar K in 2011. He didn't win, he didn't even make it that far, but his audition caught the attention of not one, not two, but 7 different entertainment companies, all of whom offered him a trainee contract. 7 companies saw a 13-year-old kid sing on a television screen and immediately said, "We need him." Jungkook chose Big Hit Entertainment. He has said in interviews that the reason was simple. He watched RM perform and thought he was cool. That's it. A 13-year-old made a decision based on a gut feeling about another teenager's charisma, and that single decision changed the entire landscape of global music. He moved to Seoul alone, 13 years old. Alone, away from his family, his friends, everything he knew, to chase a dream in a city that chews up and spits out aspiring idols by the thousands every single year. He was so shy when he arrived that the other trainees could barely get him to speak. There's footage from those early days where Jungkook stands in the corner of practice rooms, eyes wide, barely saying a word, watching the older members with a mix of admiration and terror. He was a child among teenagers, a trainee among artists, a blank canvas in a room full of people who were already painting. And then he started learning, and he never, ever stopped. This is the core of why Jungkook sits at number 1, and why Marvel directors point to him without hesitation. It's not that he's the best singer in BTS, though his vocals are extraordinary, a powerful, versatile tenor that can shift from delicate falsetto to full-throated belt within a single phrase. It's not that he's the best dancer, though his dance skills are elite. He's the member who picks up choreography the fastest, who adds subtle personal flair to every movement, who makes the hardest routines look effortless. It's not that he's the most athletic, though his physical abilities are genuinely jaw-dropping. This is a man who has demonstrated elite-level skills in boxing, archery, swimming, running, bowling, and practically every sport BTS has ever attempted on variety shows. It's not any single thing. It's everything simultaneously at an elite level with no visible ceiling. That's what the Golden Maknae title means, and it's not a fan nickname, it's a documented reality. Jungkook is the rarest type of human performer, the type who is not just good at many things, but genuinely exceptional at all of them. Vocal coaches have analyzed his singing technique and marveled at his natural breath control and emotional delivery. Dance professionals have studied his movement patterns and noted his extraordinary spatial awareness and body isolation. Athletic trainers have watched him pick up physical skills in hours that take most people months. He learns by watching. He absorbs technique through observation and then replicates it at a level that borders on supernatural. In the superhero world, there's a name for that: adaptive ability, the power to encounter any challenge, any skill, any discipline, and master it almost immediately. That's not Captain America. That's not Iron Man. That's something beyond both. That's the hero you build the entire franchise around, because you know that no matter what threat you throw at them, they will find a way. And then there's the global solo career that proved everything the directors suspected. When Jungkook released 7 featuring Lotto in July 2023, it didn't just debut at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, it shattered streaming records. It became the fastest song to reach 100 million streams on Spotify. It dominated charts across 106 countries simultaneously. The music video showcased Jungkook's full range: singing, dancing, acting, physical comedy, romantic charisma, all in a single visual package that felt less like a K-pop release and more like a global event. Standing Next to You, released later that year, took it it even further. The track was a retro funk masterpiece, and the choreography was so physically demanding, so technically complex, that professional dancers across the internet posted reaction videos with their jaws literally hanging open. Jungkook performed it live on major American television, and he didn't just perform it, he annihilated it. Every step precise, every note perfect, every transition seamless. While dancing at full intensity, his vocals didn't waver, not once. That combination, elite singing while elite dancing at maximum physical exertion, is so rare in the music industry that most performers don't even attempt it. Jungkook does it like he's breathing. And let's talk about the FIFA World Cup. In November 2022, Jungkook performed Dreamers at the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, the single most watched sporting event on the planet. He stood on that stage in front of an estimated global audience of over 1 billion people and delivered a performance so magnetic, so effortlessly commanding that he trended worldwide for days afterward, not just in K-pop circles. Everywhere. Sports fans who had never heard of BTS were Googling his name. Casual viewers who tuned in for football were suddenly watching fan compilations at 2 a.m. He converted a global sports audience into fans with a single performance. That's not star power. That's gravitational force. His physical presence deserves its own paragraph because it's a critical component of the superhero argument. Jungkook's body is, and there's no delicate way to say it, built like a superhero already. His dedication to fitness is well documented and frankly intimidating. Workout videos, boxing training clips, and behind-the-scenes footage show a man who treats physical excellence not as a vanity project, but as a discipline, a daily practice, a non-negotiable part of his identity. His muscle definition, his stamina, his explosive power, all of it translates directly to the physical demands of a Marvel role. He wouldn't need CGI enhancement. He wouldn't need a stunt double for most sequences. He could do the work himself, and it would look better than anything a computer could generate. Marvel directors also point to something less tangible but equally important. Jungkook has the it factor at a scale that transcends cultural boundaries. He became the most followed individual on Instagram, surpassing actors, athletes, and musicians who had decades of head start. He doesn't just attract fans, he creates devotion, the kind of audience connection that makes a franchise not just successful, but culturally defining. That's the difference between a good superhero movie and an era-defining one. You need a face that the world agrees on, and the world has agreed on Jungkook. So there it is, number 1. Not because he's the most intellectual, RM holds that crown. Not because he's the most strategic, that's Suga's domain. Not because he's the most emotionally complex, Jimin and V own those territories. But because Jungkook is the totality, the complete weapon, the hero with no gaps in his armor, no weakness in his stance, no limit to his evolution. He was a shy 13-year-old who walked into a room full of strangers and decided to become the best at everything, and then actually did it. If Marvel ever builds a new Avenger from scratch, one hero to represent the next generation, one face to carry the franchise into the future, they wouldn't need to look far. They just need to look at Jungkook, because he's already there.
And there you have it, the full list. 7 names, 7 stories, 7 completely different versions of what it means to be a superhero, and not a single one of them is less powerful than the other. Let that sink in, because here's the truth that this entire ranking has been secretly telling you from the very beginning. You can't rank heart. You can't rank sacrifice. You can't rank the thing that makes a person look at an impossible situation and say, I'm going anyway. Jin, the shield behind the smile, the emotional backbone who holds the team together when every logical reason says it should fall apart. Suga, the silent genius, the shadow strategist who already won the war before the enemy even realized it started. RM, the philosopher king, the voice that stood at the United Nations and made the world listen to a kid from Ilsan who taught himself English from a sitcom. J-Hope, the sunshine with the nuclear reactor underneath, the man whose transformation from light to fury is so extreme that it rewrites the rules of what a performer can be. Jimin,
the angel who fights like a devil, the eye magnet whose grace and danger coexist in every single heartbeat. V, the face that broke mathematics, the voice that sounds like ancient mythology, the enigma that not even Hollywood can fully decode. And Jungkook, the totality, the golden maknae, the 13-year-old who walked into a room full of strangers and decided to become the greatest at everything, and then did it. 7 members, 7 superheroes, not because Marvel gave them a costume, but because life gave them a story that no screenwriter could ever make up. They came from small towns, broke families, underground scenes, and impossible odds. They were told they wouldn't make it. They were told K-pop had no place on the global stage. They were told that 7 boys from a tiny company in South Korea could never change the world. And then they changed it anyway. So the next time someone asks you, could BTS be superheroes? Don't argue. Just smile, because they already are. And they didn't need a single drop of super serum to prove it.